our main discussion topic for today was to bring together ideas around celebrations and anniversaries. So, Jeff, without any further ado, do you want to tell us about 100 Years of Vicarage Road?
Yes, and I'm sorry that I have to leave. I'm going to a memorial service for an ex-colleague shortly, and it does mean I'll miss hearing what everyone else has got to say about their plans. Roger and I had both prepared some charts, which I don't know if they found their way to you, Fran. I was thinking I might talk to those. But what we found, and he's done, and he'll tell you a little bit more length than I will. He's been involved in an anniversary program at Reading. I've been involved in one at Watford. Whilst we basically did this stuff independently of each other, we found that the number of common elements was really quite surprising. As far as the Watford one is concerned, it was very much a joint initiative between club and supporters, and that was very helpful to us because the club has resourced it reasonably generously. They've invested quite a lot in some video material. There were half a dozen videos that were produced. They've put together a significant budget for the publication of a book. Oh, we have some charts. So there's a book which I authored. That there was they funded the publication of that. It was all run in practice through a working group. And it's been a 3-year project, or it will have been by the time the project finishes. We get together on a monthly basis. A couple of things worth saying, and in addition to the club and the supporters and the third party in Watford Museum, we had the local newspaper significantly involved. So the sports editor was also on the group. He gave significant air to some of the call-outs to supporters to get their memories in. All told, though, for anyone thinking about doing this stuff, if you're going to do it to a good standard, it requires a huge amount of time from a lot of people. And most of the people doing it in the Watford case were doing it on a voluntary basis. But you have to really throw yourself into it and be ready to spend very large amounts of time. I'm no doubt going to be preaching to the choir on that as regards those who are engaged in these initiatives at the moment. But if you're about to start, certainly it's very helpful having the club on side if they have people in the senior management who are supportive and want to get involved in these things. But yeah, secondly, be ready to spend a lot of time on it.
You want me to? I can't remember how many slides there are in this deck, Jeff.
There's about 4. Yes, I mean they were really just picked. Yes, if you want to spin through them, I can just speak to each one. But they're really just illustrations of some of the things that we've done. So the first one is the book. And you can see a lineup of Watford legends at the signing session in the club shop prior to a match on a Saturday morning. That's when we did that. The next one, I think, illustrates the videos. They're all curated both on the club website and on their YouTube channel. The next one sort of illustrates how we put a museum exhibition together. Well, but the same 2 guys who did the Watford Gold website that I was talking about. There's some quite aged items there, including a turnstile that actually made it across from the previous home ground it had seen service at. So that predates the move. And I think there's one more, which is the fact that the club, in recognising the exhibition, the second and third shirts for this season represent the two other sets of kit that they've worn whilst playing at Vicarage Road. Finally, I think there is actually one more. There's plenty of club merch in addition to the book, and some of it quite stylish, actually. That polo shirt has the names of every single player who ever played at Vicarage Road within the weave of it. And there's also going to be a match to celebrate the 100 years, staged at the previous stadium, or I can't really call it a stadium, it's West Hart Sports Club. That's where Watford used to play until 1922, and there's going to be a match with the Watford legends playing there, which is also something that Roger will talk about, because Reading did that too. I'm going to finish there because I have to leave, so sorry about that. But that's how things rolled out at Watford.
Lovely. Well, I think because I'm recording this session, I'll send around the link to recording, so you'll catch everybody else's discussions when you've got a moment to catch up on it. And I think if anybody wants to come back to Jeff, if Jeff, are you happy for me to share your contact details?
Certainly.
Okay. And then at the end of our discussions, and I have a feeling that, you know, our discussions may take more than one meeting anyway, we can come back and revisit some of those topics. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay,
and
bye all.
We'll see you again soon. Roger, do you want to follow on Jeff's heels and talk about Reading?
Yeah. If you just put up.
Do you want me to share from this end, or are you going to share from your end?
No, if you can share from your end. Oh, actually, no, hang on. I might be able to share screen. Right, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That works. Brilliant. I'm surprised. Just as a quick update on what else we've been doing before I get to that. The Great Save has always been about trying to get people to create an organisation to go out and save their football heritage. And eventually it's come to me to try and practice what I preach. So I've, as a legacy of the museum exhibition, which I'll talk about in a moment, started on the road to try to create a heritage society at Reading. I've had a very positive meeting with the Berkshire Record Office, who will curate two-dimensional material. And I've got discussions with a couple of museums in Reading about the three-dimensional material. We are unpacking the display material from the museum at the football stadium at the moment, so that will be a legacy that will be distributed more permanently around the football stadium. But I am taking my first tentative steps towards creating, I don't know, a charity perhaps, on the advice of the Exeter City people, as a means of getting to a heritage society. Just then to talk briefly about what we did for the Reading Football Club 150th. I know Davey and Leanne have already heard quite a lot of this, but that's how long ago it started. It was 2.5 years planning before we got onto the first event, and we had a core team that represented all these different stakeholders, and we met monthly by Zoom during COVID to try and execute a lot of these things. I could divide it into two sections: club-led activity, where we had a Legends match at the stadium. We got 9,000 people there, and a lot of goodwill because we had two Reading Football League champions teams playing against each other. We also managed retro home and away kits, again, similar to what Watford did. And we had the names of Hall of Fame players woven into the hoops. And then the club put out various different bits of merchandise there. So there's an ad for the big match, the retro kit, the season ticket packet, and even a biscuit tin, as we used to be the biscuit tin. We had education modules funded by the Premier League Fans Fund for primary schools, dinners, flower displays, murals, merchandise, So you can see some of that there. There's the history model. There's a geography and a maths module for the primary schools. And then from the fan side, we straplined everything we sent out as the oldest league club in the South, 150 years celebrated by Star, the Supporters Trust. And we largely funded an exhibition at the museum, created a film about the old ground, a players panel through the ages, which was part of Sporting Heritage Day, and reenacted Reading's first ever win against the same opponents on the same ground to the 1872 rules, and some other bits and pieces. So there's the museum exhibition, a still from the film, the players panel, which shows Neil Webb, A.D. Williams, Tom McIntyre, a current player, and a man in a hat over the far side who's channeling a Victorian player. This is the rematch with its own programme at my former school, which played the football club in 1872, and we used old goalposts, no penalty areas, and we sold off all the special shirts afterwards with the date of the original match embroidered on it. And then this is the kind of material that we put out during the course of the season, yesterday's programme as opposed to today's programme, where we picked a match from exactly however many years ago, 10, 20, 30, 50, and so on. So that's briefly a run through of what we did over the course of the year to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the football club, engaging the community in all kinds of different ways. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Roger. And what, because that's a massive range of activity. What were the sort of star things? What do you feel worked really well, and what, if you had your time again, would you not do, if you can possibly say that?
The museum exhibition was crucial. I think it gave a centrality and a purpose to it, and I'm glad that we, the fans, directed that and gave full scope to the history. The rematch, I'm glad we did it, but it was an awful lot of work. And when one of the Football Club Academy people said to us afterwards, "Are we going to do this every year?" I went, "Get lost," because you wouldn't believe the amount of health and safety and safeguarding and what have you have to do when you engage adults on the same football pitch as minors, and etc., etc. So I would do it again. I would caution anybody who's doing it to take a long time planning and thinking about that. I think we didn't get as much support from the town council as we would have liked in various things, and I have to say the commercial people didn't really come up with trumps in terms of goods and money. I think on that side of it, it was a little bit disappointing, you know. So yeah.
Okay, good to hear. Stephen Motti, do you want to chip in? Because I know that you prepared some bits across what had happened at your end, and then maybe Leanne, can I come to you and we'll talk about Hearts?
Fran, thanks. Yeah, but yes, hearing Roger and Jeff talk about 100 or 150th anniversary, certainly not Notts County Football Club, if I can talk about that first. Because the 150th was back in 2012, and that was very much club-led, actually. I think the highlight of it was actually a banquet on the pitch. There was a marquee after the end of the season set up on the pitch, and I remember things like every table had a retro football on it, and there were various different fundraising wheezers to sort of separate diners from a lot of money to take these footballs home and stuff like that. But that's really what I wasn't going to talk about. Rather, not County Football Club. Just talk about some of the a couple of the fan-led things, because sometime after the 150th in 2012, I project managed a heritage project which looked at what the club could do to celebrate its lengthy history. And one of the things I did was just produce a very simple Excel spreadsheet where down the left-hand side were milestones that I just drew out of all the different sources of reference and the date. And then across the columns was literally +5, +10, +25, +50, +75, and so on. And then Excel does all the work for you and tells you what year it is, and then literally did a sort and say, right, what's coming up in 2019 that we might want to celebrate? Because as part of the Heritage Project, convened a reference group of supporters who became quite keen to do something. So we chose the 125th anniversary of our one FA Cup win, and we chose a couple of smaller, minor, lesser anniversaries: 100 years of Tommy Lawton's birth and 50 years of Jimmy Cyril's appointment as the manager. They became two different events. The FA Cup winners celebration, we actually got the FA Cup, the current FA Cup, along with the couple of heavies who wouldn't let it out of their sight the whole time and stopped anybody getting their hands anywhere near it at all, until it came to the captain of Notts, who was allowed to carry it onto the pitch and parade it before the crowd before the first match. Anyway, there was an exhibition of press coverage and photographs. The players who played in 1894 were inducted into the Hall of Fame en masse. The menu in the hospitality suite was actually inspired by food that they had at the banquet to celebrate our one FA Cup win back in 1894. One of our celebrity fans, a guy called Billy Ivory, who is an actor and a screenwriter, he did a sort of I'd call it a one-man show. It was more of a soliloquy, I suppose, really. It was a sort of one-man performance where he imagined and wrote an account of the day and the day after by one of the players. It was largely based on fact, although I was a bit surprised when I heard some of the sort of embroidery that he actually did. There was a special edition of the match programme, and the final thing, we got one former player from Notts and one former player from our opponents, who were Bolton Wanderers, to wear replica kit and do a penalty shootout at half time during the match. And anyway, so that was deemed to go well, and certainly the Lawton and Cyril anniversaries, we did a dinner for that, which we managed to find Tommy Lawton's last surviving teammate, who unfortunately has since died since 2019, but also one of the biographers of Lawton, who used to be the editor of the local Evening Post. We had Howard Wilkinson, who was Jimmy's assistant before he went off and formed his own managerial career, and also Don Masson, who was sort of Jimmy Cyril's right-hand man on the pitch, and they both did talks as well. It went well. I think the event was rather hijacked in some ways by the fact that it was combined with the induction of the club's current record goal scorer into the Hall of Fame. So it became an event about Les Brad a bit more than it did about Tommy Lawton and Jimmy Cyril in some ways. Now, I can't remember exactly how that hijack happened, but anyway, it was an enjoyable. It was a sellout in one of the hospitality suites at Meadow Lane. Since then, I stepped back and said, look, this is an example of what could be done, but I just haven't got the time to stay involved, and not because I'm not involved, but nothing much, unfortunately, has happened since then, and maybe there's a learning point there. Over this side of the Trent, I'm bored, I'm sure, some people on this call with the fact that Trent Bridge was actually an international football ground before it held a test match. England played Ireland here in 1897, and we didn't at football, and England didn't play Australia until 1899 at cricket. So as a football fan, I've always been keen to sort of do something around that, and we did 125 years of the Football International. So I designated one of our county championship matches as the football match, and we had an illustrated talk in every every lunchtime during county championship matches. I think cricket's got a great advantage over football in that the match day audience is probably easier to reach in a more structured, calmer manner, if you like, really. And we've found that doing illustrated talks during the lunch break of a county championship match, which is about 40 minutes, goes down really well. So because it was Derbyshire, and because Derby County Cricket Club actually formed Derbyshire County Cricket Club, Derbyshire County Cricket Club formed Derby County Football Club. I asked my colleague David Griffin from Derby if he'd like to do a talk about that, and then I did a couple of talks, one about Trent Bridge as a football ground, because Forest played here for 3 years before they moved out and Notts moved in for 20 odd years, and then also a tale of two counties, which is the interwoven story of Notts County Cricket Club and Notts County Football Club. We had an article on the club website. We dug out some of the football-related correspondence from the club archives going back to the late 1800s, and we also had a competition to win football books, which we just found in the library, and the competition was to match current players with the football teams that they support, and that really engaged supporters, actually, because one of them went to great trouble scouring social media and actually got them all correct. I was amazed that he did, but it's clearly very hard to hide the football team that you support if you happen to live on social media. We do a lot of cricket-related anniversaries here, and one of the things I did when a Nottingham Trent University student needed a placement a few years ago, I said, right, help us think ahead for the next 10 years on our anniversaries. So he knew a lot about cricket, I have to say, which I think was essential, because we'd had a couple of students who really didn't know much about cricket, and everything's of face value and is of equal relevance to them, and they don't understand the stories behind them. Whereas this guy is a real cricket badger, and he loved doing this. So he basically has prepared a planner for us that sort of goes through for the next 10 years. So we can take a look ahead and think not just what are we going to do this year, but actually how does that relate to some of the things that we're going to do down the line, really. So as it happens this year, there is no one big anniversary. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have a discussion with some of our volunteers who are interested in celebrating anniversaries, and we're going to say, okay, which of these smaller events are we going to celebrate, and either make it into a critical mass, try and link them together somehow, or else just celebrate them as separate things, really. So I've got a few general learning points. I don't know if you want me to leave those until the end, Fran, or if you want me to
should we come up, because I'm worried that we're going to squeeze the time, because I'm really keen to hear from Leanne. But yes, let's come back to those at the end, if that's okay, Steve. But yeah, that sounds really great. And that crossover, I don't see David just put something in the chat about Hearts having played at Trent Bridge as well. So it's that crossover between clubs, but also across sports, isn't it? Leanne, do you want to tell us about plans at Hearts?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. We first of all, just want to say thanks to Roger, because we met with Roger quite a while ago when we were very first talking about, the fact that our anniversary was coming up, and we got a lot of good sort of feedback from Roger on the work that they'd done and things that worked and things that hadn't worked so well. So that was really great for us to go forward with, a bit of feedback to take to our management team. Just to give you, I'm sure Davey's giving you context on our setup at Hearts, because we're a bit different in that we're not a heritage trust, we're a core staff of the club, so we're a department that sits in the football club. So my job is the head of the heritage department. What we call it is the tiniest department in the club, but we are overseen by the community and partnerships director, who's one of the senior execs of the club. So we are in quite a good position in some ways, because we are, directly involved with the club, and we've got that whole sort of community side where we link up with the club charity as well quite often. So and obviously we've got the direct line into the senior exec of the club. So a lot of what we do is kind of just in tandem with the club, because we're part of the club. So obviously when we started planning our anniversary, the heritage department is kind of the centre of that, which is nice. You know, the club really wants heritage to lead on this project. We're seeing it as kind of a programme of events that encompasses the whole club. So the way that we're managing it is that I'll be sort of programme managing it, overseen by our community and partnerships director. But really what we're doing is sitting down and chatting to each of the different departments in the club to ask them to put together their own series of events for the sort of season that we've chosen to celebrate, with lots of different activities. So it's like a big whole scale programme of events. Budget wise, obviously the club's financing a lot of this, which is obviously helpful and very nice for us, because we don't have to worry so much about income generation, although we are looking at ways to work with different partners during the next couple of years, rolling out some of the activities and projects to see if we can sort of bring in some funding to help support that, because as a department we're really a not-for-profit department. We are also looking at innovative ways to sort of get some supporter sponsorship for the activities. And some of the things we're looking at, for example, we've got a big plaza outside our stadium that's largely just a massive empty space where people gather on a match day, and it's a really good space to use. So we're talking about putting some big art pieces up that really celebrate the 150th anniversary. And we were talking about that kind of QR code art where you can get people to like maybe buy a square on the artwork, and then when you scan the QR code, that would give you some information about why they've become a fan, what they love about the club, that kind of thing, or, you know, memories from them. So that's one of the things that we're looking at that would also help fund some of the sort of heritage specific activities that we want to take forward. And that would help primarily fund a project that's being brought to us by the Foundation of Hearts. Obviously, we're a fan-owned club. Foundation of Hearts is the sort of organisers of the sort of fan ownership movement. So they brought to us a suggestion of a project which celebrates our 150th anniversary with a big sort of street furniture branding project. So we're looking at, we've got a memorial for the the 1914 team for Hearts that sits about a mile away from the club in the city centre. So we call it, there's sort of a kind of like a big long street that's around about a mile that takes you from there up to the stadium. So we're looking to work with the council to sort of maybe change the street signage and add some street sort of signs celebrating it as a maroon mile. That's one of the ideas that the foundation have come up with. So like I said, we're sort of running this as a program. So what we've done is looked at the different, we just sectioned it up into different areas like marketing, logo and branding, which obviously would encompass merchandising and selling the club shop for selling things for the 150th, dressing the stadium. We looked at sort of fiscal activities, so more formal dinners, you know, receptions, hopefully engaging with our local councillors to celebrate the club's history. We're looking at innovation and digital quite a lot, because I think part of the plan is to create a sub-website that focuses on our 150th, which a lot of people have sort of done. But we're just in this process as a club of changing over our website. So we're doing a lot of development on that, which gives us an opportunity to come up with a sort of new area to celebrate the history of the club and pull it all together. And that in itself would be quite a big project. So what we're doing with that is we are partnering up with our innovation centre at the club, who exist to provide digital education classes for free for local kids. And that's sponsored heavily by Dell and Bailey Gifford. So we've got a lot of sort of partnerships initiative where heritage is in there, you know, to try and utilise, I guess, the different groups that we already work with within the club to create opportunities to share our heritage. So, for example, one of the projects that we're looking at with the Innovation Centre is, well, there's two. One of the ideas is to try and create a more interactive kind of stadium tour, like we do a historical stadium tour. And we're looking at whether we can do some kind of holographic or 3D sort of interactive part for the tour. We are also looking at them running some classes, getting the kids to interrogate data that exists already from Davy's great London Hearts website. So yeah, we're looking at sort of linking up heritage with some of the other areas that already exist in the club. Then we were looking at live events, so there'll be a big celebration at the stadium, a festival weekend, where we, interestingly enough, we're talking about using the pitch to hold a big sort of player of the 150 years celebration. We're thinking about creating an opportunity for supporters to vote on those kind of events and celebrations. So like, who would your top players be for the whole of the Hearts history? Yeah, maybe like a super Hall of Fame event, and really engaging with Big Hearts, our charity, to look at sort of community activities as part of those festivities as well. I really liked the what was it called, the go into the match art idea, because one of the things that we're talking about is kind of starting to engage local schools that we already connect with and partner with on different projects, and really asking them to sort of come up with ideas to help celebrate the 150th. And I think something like that would be lovely, like somehow involving an art project for them. So yeah, I'm kind of like rushing through a lot of the different plans that we've got, because we're just right in the middle of it right now. The plan is to launch, I guess we'll be launching officially the news of how we're going to celebrate our 150th this summer. And it starts with the kit launch for this season for 2023-24, because we'll have a heritage logo on the kit. And then we'll launch the sub website and start listing some of the coming activities that we're working on. And then all of the activities should happen from January onwards in 2024, because we've got no set date to focus on, like we've mentioned before. So yeah, I think I've kind of rushed through a lot of it. There's a lot of other projects that are going on that are just specifically heritage that our department are running. For example, the Transcribe-a-thon is going to help give us some I guess once we've transcribed and put together all the information from a series of Transcribe-a-thon events that were held in this year, next year we can look at better making that information available and searchable. And yeah, there's a lot of different projects that are being run by different people that we're sort of helping with, such as a video that the club's producing to celebrate the heritage, a commemorative booklet. We've got a collector that we work with that has loaned a lot of objects to the museum, who's putting together a 150 objects book that's linked to the club. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of work to do. And I'll stop there.
I hope you've got a good team of people around you, Leanne, to help deliver all of this, because that is a busy programme, isn't it? It sounds amazing, sounds absolutely fantastic. What I'll do is I'll try and capture everything that you've said, and what I might do before I send it around to the group, I might send it to you directly just to say, have I captured this correctly and have I missed anything out? Okay. Just before we go back to Steve for learning points, does anybody else want to chip in with plans? I didn't know, Adam, if you wanted to share any of the plans around the Welsh activity, or Headley, whether you wanted to share any of the stuff that had been planned around civil service anniversaries.
If I can just mention very, very quickly, the Civil Service Football Club has actually existed for more than 160 years. However, they made a decision very early in their formation that they would recognise their formation from the 26th of October 1863, when they were one of the clubs that formed the FA. That means that this year they're celebrating their 160th anniversary, and they will be visiting Lisbon. As the Civil Service Football Club were perhaps the first club to start touring Europe in 1901, and Benfica were one of the teams that they played back in that time. So they are revisiting, because over the years that they've played against most of the top teams in Europe, and are in fact honorary members of quite a few clubs, including Real Madrid. Just moving on, one other point. Within the civil service in 1922, a senior civil servant donated a trophy for competition between civil service football clubs. That will be celebrating its centenary this year with the final at St George's Park. The trophy, when it was introduced, was described as the largest trophy for football in the land, if not in the world. it is a very significant silver trophy. And the first final, in fact, was played at Tottenham Hotspurs, with the 2 semi-finals at Manchester City and Portsmouth. And I'll stop there.
Hmm. Well, how the Lisbon trip sounds amazing. How lovely to have got such a fantastic place to go, and it's not somewhere, you know, dark and cold and far to go. I mean, you know,
That they are recognised, and each year that they will tour. They were due to go to Barcelona in 2021, because they first played them in 1921. That obviously didn't happen.
No.
But they have this status and reputation that these very established clubs in Europe will welcome them back. All right, they don't play against Barcelona first team, but they're still recognised by the club because of that very, very important role they played in the development of European football.
Yeah, great to keep those relationships going.
It is, absolutely.
Is anybody else like to chip in with any plans? And Tim?
Okay, great. I was just inspired, actually, and sorry, Roger, not put off entirely at the idea of football by old rules and things. Our 150th is in 5 years' time, so we're actually just starting the planning. So thank you, everybody, for doing all the planning work for us. But it just struck me that we actually have possibly our first event now next year. Ipswich Town Football Club grew out of old boys of Ipswich School who wanted to carry on playing football when they left school, and they realised there wasn't a club, so they had to start one, and all the initial games were actually against Ipswich School and other public schools in the area. In 1874, so 150 years next year, Ipswich School adopted the association rules simply so they could start playing games against other schools. At that time, every school played football according to their own rules. Ipswich School know what the rules were of their original game, and we're going to try and get something set up with them. We've got a decent relationship. I'm thinking they could just using school kids so that we avoid a lot of the issues, but I bet they would love to play one half on their old rules and one half on new rules. And it might just be a nice way of us kicking off the idea of 150 years.
Yeah, the Reading Academy lads, when I talked to them afterwards, said, yeah, that was really interesting. It felt so much more of a free flow kind of game than what they're used to. Because it was also 13 aside, so that confused them positionally.
Yeah, surely that would bend people's brains, you know, one half one way and one half another way. But yeah, a good challenge. Yeah, and why not? You know, what a great hook to hang it on to do it around the anniversaries. Oh, sorry, was I cutting somebody off? Davey, was that you?
Say, very briefly, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a cartoon that was produced of our first recorded game against Hibs. And we're the team in white with a maroon heart, but they're wearing cricket-style trousers. So that's what it was like 150 years ago, and the goalposts are just 2 poles with a bit of tape across.
Great. I feel this meeting has been a real crossover of football and cricket, more so than we've had in previous meetings. But yeah, there's definitely a synergy between the two. Circling all the way back round, Steve, can we come back to you for your learning points then, and then we'll...
Sure, Fran. Yeah. I started at Trent Bridge in 2018, and we've certainly built our heritage programme, a lot of it, and in terms of the engagement and activities bit around anniversaries, and certainly I've picked up a lot of experience along the way, because it hasn't all gone well. I think one of the things I've already mentioned about if there's no one big anniversary, a number of smaller ones can form a critical mass. I think in terms of planning ahead, depends how you measure it. You can either get 2 bites of the same cherry, or you could decide which of 2 years to celebrate something. Because, for instance, the T20 Blast League started in 2003, which means that 2022 was the 20th year, but 2023 is actually the anniversary, is the 20th anniversary. So, you know, you could justifiably do either. As it happened, our media team decided to celebrate 20 years. We're going to do the 20th anniversary. So, so we've sort of gone our separate ways on that anyway. But that's worth thinking about over the long term when you think of what are we going to celebrate each year to try and produce a manageable flow, because a lot of the fantastic work everybody's talked about is you know, as other people have said, really labour intensive, isn't it? And, trying to balance it out, I think, is important. After the research stage, we've found that some of the anniversaries, there's very little supporting evidence. Classic example being the first recorded cricket match in Nottingham, which took place in 1771. And apart from one newspaper report, we know nothing more about the match. We don't really know anything about the players. And it was almost about, well, is this a dead end? Absolutely the opposite, because apart from having a walking cricket match on the same ground on the same day, 250 years later, and we had walking cricket because it would be far too dangerous to play hardball cricket on the ground that was originally used. We knew that other sports were played on the forest. It was actually, the cricket match was within the horse race track at the time. So the research project turned into other sports that have been played on the forest, which I must have now delivered to at least 10 U3A and local history groups over the last couple of years. I think, you know, I'm sure other people have been discovered by their U3A local communities, and once you do a half decent talk to one, you know you're going to get invites to others. So that's been a really good thing. And another thing, you know, when the USA national team played here, there wasn't even a report in the paper. The two guys we could find who played in the match couldn't remember anything about it. So it clearly wasn't that memorable a match. So we ended up thinking about what other contact points are there between Trentbridge, Notts and the USA, and we do a guided tour of the ground either once or twice a week. And on the 4th of July, we did a USA themed tour where we talked about the World War I baseball matches that were played here, and the players who went out on a sailing ship to the first overseas tour that was to Philadelphia, which was a big centre of cricket back in the 1800s. So you know, we started out thinking we were going in one direction, but ended up with a bit of lateral thinking, ending up somewhere else. I think another thing is that one anniversary can generate a number of storylines, and I think our World War I project was a classic example, which actually created 4 different, almost project-sized storylines in themselves. We 6 men died during the war, and we managed to find the relatives of all those, so they attended the unveiling of the memorial. The second one was about men who served and survived, which is the hardest one to find out about, really. The third one was what happened on the pitch, because although county cricket stopped, a lot of other activities took place. And then the fourth one was about the hospital, because the 2 pavilions got taken over as a Red Cross hospital. So and that didn't close till 2019. So because of the workload of doing the first 3 storylines, we said, right, let's not celebrate the hospital, commemorate the hospital until 2019. So, and I think the final thing, Fran, and I think the World War I project was a classic example about how anniversaries can help involve club staff and club officials, and therefore integrate heritage into the organisation to a better extent. Because I started out here as a volunteer, and you know, for many years we felt we were just knocking on the door of the club and nobody particularly wanted to listen. Having become a member of staff, that obviously opens a lot more doors, but by inviting the club president to unveil the memorial and inviting the members of the general committee and getting other senior staff involved, it was that sort of, oh yeah, that's the potential of heritage, isn't it? And I think that was a real step forward in terms of traction, impact, whatever you want, within the club structures. And you know, and we haven't looked back since then, really. So I would never underestimate the value of anniversaries for a sort of internal political purpose, as well as for a sort of external public engagement, really. So okay, so those are just some of the things I've learned, along with an awful lot of mistakes that we've made over the last few years as well. But I hope that helped.
No, lovely. Well, you know, the mistakes and things that you know you wouldn't do again, you know, are just as important, aren't they? At least if you can hand them on to somebody else. So, so yeah, well, I knew that we'd have lots to talk about, and I feel that maybe we may have only just touched the surface. We'll come to an end for today. Is this a topic you would like to carry on for our next meeting? So we're next due in April. I can actually give you the dates. I've just sent the dates around for the newsletter, and I don't think the newsletter's gone out yet. I had them in the top of my head, and now it's disappeared. So I think it is, bear with, Tuesday the 25th of April. Sorry, I've got somebody trying to call me at the same time. So what I could do is look around for some other case studies, and particularly maybe look at picking up on some of those points that you've just mentioned, Steve, where we can talk about the impact that some of the work around anniversaries has helped integrating heritage in with the club or in with the local community, and just look at sort of different ways. So I think we've talked quite broadly today, haven't we? So if I maybe pull out some different ways of looking at and using anniversaries, I will try and capture everything that everybody said today. But what I plan to do is actually clip this recording. So I will type up people's updates, but because there was so much that everybody talked about the anniversaries, I will turn it into a resource. I think it will end up being a paper resource or an online resource, but so that everybody can rewatch this sort of last 45 minutes of our chat. Sometimes it's easier just to listen to everybody chatting away. Has anybody got any other business before we come to an end? No, I think we've done quite a lot of talking. I'd like to thank everybody who's contributed to the session today, and particularly Roger. I know Jeff's already gone, and Steve, who did a bit of prep beforehand. Roger and Steve, are you happy for me to share the bits that you sent round to me in advance of the meeting? Yeah.
Yes, can I just tweak mine a little bit, and I'll send you version 2 to send around, Fran, certainly. Yeah.
And I was going to say, if you've got any pics, if you've got any photos.
Yes, sure. I will. We'll pull some together, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. And then I'll pull together all the other comments that everybody's made. Brilliant, lovely to see everybody. And if I don't see you before, see you on Tuesday the 25th of April. Okay. Before then, hopefully you'll get details of all our in-person events that are going to happen this year. And you'll see a lot more of myself and Steve from the business development side, and you'll have Justine's survey to do. So there'll be plenty of things coming out from Sporting Heritage. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. See everybody soon.
Bye.
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 Thank you.